Well, this is going to go a ways back, but tell me a little bit about where you grew up. You'll have to speak up a little bit.
I was thinking, I grew up in Chickasha, Oklahoma, which is a very small town in southwest Oklahoma, near Oklahoma City. That's where I started. And then was influenced by a TV series called The Gale Storm Show, which is way before anybody's time here. She was a cruise director, and I wanted to be a cruise director. So I wrote to Cunard Lines, which was a predecessor of a Princess Cruise, okay, and said, how do I become a cruise director? Okay, and they sent me really good career advice, and that is because I was still in Oklahoma, said, move closer to the ocean. So I did. I moved to California, right? What more do you want? So I did not become a cruise director. Instead, I became a middle school speech, drama, and English teacher. Because by that time, my Oklahoma junior high principal, who was a family friend, had moved to California with his wife, who became a community college counselor, and he went back in the classroom because he didn't want to be an administrator anymore. So literally my former junior high principal got me a job, and I taught next door to him, which was like kind of surreal because I knew him as a principal, and now he was a co-teacher. Isn't that amazing? So that's where I started.
What drew you into theater?
Okay, and I'm going to start. My mother was ahead of her time. She had 5 children with father, my dad. There was quite an age difference between my sister, who's next to me, and that was like 12 years. So all I remember of her really, it was the first time memory that when I was 5 years old, she was a great deal older, and I remember thinking, she was kind of mean to me while she was in high school. What did I know? So each one of us was encouraged to develop our own paths. So out of those 5, my oldest sister became a hospital administrator. My second sister was a physical therapist. My brother became an ophthalmologist. He was the first doctor in the U.S. to bring laser surgery over. And then my sister next to me became a PE teacher. And I, at a very young age, began to take elocution lessons from a woman who had moved to Chickasha from New York City because her husband was a conductor on the Rock Island Railroad. Okay, yes. And so literally I stood on Mrs. A.B. Morgan's Persian rug every week and did a monologue. It was private one-on-one coaching, but at that time it was elocution lessons. And then made my way through high school typing, old-fashioned manual typewriter, typing scripts for her. So by the time I graduated from high school, I had a file of 150 2-minute monologues. Okay. And then majored in theater at a small women's college in Oklahoma because we really didn't have the money to afford anything. My dad had his own sheet metal shop, and there were times that he got paid by sides of beef, with sides of beef rather than money, because that was the economy. And my mother was ahead of her time. She kept sending me there. I made my way through that, worked in college as a secretary to a theater professor, and so what got me started is the love of literature. Yeah. And in high school, we took part in the junior play and the senior play, okay, not like thespians today. And the junior year, I was cast as Mrs. Jones in an unforgettable script called Almost Summer, which is because now my name is Mrs. Jones, okay, so, and then in the senior play, I was cast as the prompter, and I even then knew that's not a position that's not even a staff position during the performance. I sat behind a flat with a script, and I kept thinking, what do I do if they forget a line? Am I calling it out loud? So at that time, I knew then, I knew in 5th grade I wanted to be an educator, theater educator. And from that point on, I vowed I would never cast a kid as an unnecessary part.
Yeah.
So that's what got me started. Love of literature, I think, is it.
Yeah. Well, here comes the question I know you've been wanting.
What?
What do you love about theater?
Empowerment, the collaboration. When I do a show, everyone has equal billing, and that is you are a supporting actor. One person may have more lines than the other, but everybody's supporting because we can't do it without you and your uniqueness. So that's what I love the most. And all of the 21st century skills, communication, critical thinking, creative thinking, and collaboration is the big one.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, from your point of view, what collaboration looks like. Or how about this? What does a true theater community look like?
Within, not community, not as in community
not
theater.
As in community theater, but
Yeah.
as in a troupe or a crew or a collection of players. What does a true community of theatrical people?
Okay, working at the high school that I did for 34 years, a little shout out, and then when I retired, they named the theater after me, so that's kind of cool. I'll go back and see a plaque. Everyone did everything. Okay, if you were a technician, you got on stage at least once. It might have been a walkthrough, or as big a line, so big a part as you want. And the other side, each actor had to tech at least one show. So I think it's an appreciation for the art form. That's a community. The other is recognizing each person's talents and own special uniqueness, and each person has value. I think that's it. Yeah.
How have you seen theater change through the years?
Educational theater or theater per se?
More broadly, actually, just theater in general.
I think our job as theater practitioners and directors, we have more challenges with the digital age and the phone in the hand. And the attention span is that we know that most kids' attention span is the length of a short television show from commercial to commercial. And engaging them past that time and engaging them to the point that they're willing to suspend disbelief and go with the playwright and the story and the arc and the character until it reaches their emotions. I think that's really difficult now because of and we created it, and because of the digitalization and the TV and which I love, and the video games. It's working with children to be engaged in a sense that takes them past what they thought they could be. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's our challenge.
Yeah. What's an example maybe of a show that you've either seen or that you've been a part of where you've seen some of that challenge addressed in a really great way?
I think when you mention that, probably one of the most involving plays that my students, there are 3 of them, that they really understood how impactful a story could be is Jim Leonard Jr.'s The Diviners, in which the small town ignorance causes the death of a young boy who is mentally challenged. And having the technical staff create the drowning on stage without water, but with the lights, so powerful. The other one is William Master Simone's Bang Bang You're Dead, which has to do with one of the first school shootings. And it took place in Oregon, and he wrote this story in the play. And he also serves as a consultant. He still does. He will reach out to any school that's doing his play. He also has another one called Sleepwalker about teen suicide. But that was very powerful. And having it presented to every student in the school, and we did 5 performances of it, one each period, and having the counselors on hand after each performance for an influx of counseling appointments was very important. And then we did it for parents and had the community counseling. The third one was a devised piece. And I went to the administration. I said, my production class would really like to do something that will touch people's feelings and their souls. So would you recommend or would you support either production on suicide, teen suicide, on homelessness, or eating disorders? And they thought about it, and they said we would support eating disorders because it may lead to the others. And so my students did a devised piece and entitled it Starving for Perfection, in which they wrote monologues on how they've worked through any kind of eating disorders. And it was very frightening for some of them to perform it in front of their parents, because it was the first time that their parents knew that they had struggled with bulimia, okay? And that made an effect because it brought the parents and the teenagers closer together, I think. So when you ask that question, I think those are the 3. Now, for me emotionally, it's the first time I saw Ragtime that made me dissolve into tears. The first time I saw Rent, that compassion and the diversity and the dealing with social issues. Theater creates, and it sounds like everything is sad, but there are moments of joy. Seeing a cast do Bright Star and having someone, a teenager behind me, say, this is the best play I've ever seen. And that's upbeat, has moments of serious, but it ends happily.
Yeah.
And it's a musical, and they're joyous. Even Shrek, it makes people laugh, and it's understanding of diversity. You have a donkey, and you have an ogre, and the ogre finds love, you know? So anyway, so not everything is serious, but I think audience engagement, and actors, obviously, and technicians' engagement.
Well, I think you kind of listed a couple, but, in stories that have touched you, but is there a story as you think back even through the years that you think kind of even touches you personally because of some of your experiences?
With my own story, that's really a good question.
Or where you can really see
I would have
yourself
to think about that.
Or where you could really see yourself in a character.
Oh, no, I went the other way, that I could see myself in a situation, perhaps, and that is, we just saw Scottsboro Boys, because I remember being in the high school class of integration, and one day I was sitting alphabetical in world history with last name, and the next day there was a young African-American boy named Raymond Baker who was sitting in front of me. And that touched our world. And by the end of the year, the high school girls trio was made of 3 wonderful African-American girls. And the basketball team had more diversity on it. So I think anything that works with or portrays the segregation, the racial segregation, probably affected me in the age that I grew up. And sometimes, even in today's age, not much has changed in that respect. And I'm sorry to say that. And our youth need to do better than we did. And we do now. Our youth need to take that challenge and say, in our art form and in our plays and in our movies that we create, we need to address this. So I think that's it. As far as roles, nothing comes to mind right now, because I did have a company called Sage to Stage, in which 5 women, older women, took on roles that we chose, but they were roles that necessarily we wouldn't get to play because of our age. And that's a kind of another exclusion because of, age bias. And so we had a company in which we did like 3 shows a year in which we got to play, not youthful, but Our Town, not just playing the mother roles. Maybe we read for Emily, and we read Emily, okay? So I'm not sure I answered the question, but I think those touched me the most.
What was that like, playing some of those other roles?
It's an understanding of human nature. I happened to live in the town in Ojai, California, in which Thornton Wilder went to school, at a boarding school in which he based the Our Town idea on, because Ojai is a very small town. And to let us be able to play that in a town in which he wrote it as a teenager, as a teenager, and our being able to play Emily in Our Town, or whatever, George and whatever else. It's moving in the sense of historical perspective too, and connection with past, present, and future. It's going to be there. Our town would be there for a long time, and so having that connection and evolution and portraying it, I think, is very important for us. The other thing that brought to mind is that once I retired, and then I was able, actually I did this with high school students as well, is that we would collect writings from elementary school, and the teacher would collect the writings and send them to us, and then the high school students would adapt them into play form or poetry or whatever. And then what would be really nice is that the high school I would take the high school students over near the end of the year to stage them with simple props and simple costume pieces, and we gave a little crown to the writer of the day, so the elementary school 4th or 5th grade elementary school writer, and we honored several of those, probably maybe 20 of them. But the idea is that these high school seniors got to go back and see their elementary school teacher before they graduated. It's another one of those continuum. They evidently had a love of literature even in the 4th or 5th grade, and this teacher fostered it, and now they're getting ready to go off into college, and they wanted to go back one more time and say, look what you gave me. So I think those make a difference also. And seeing kids' works on stage, and it may not be the most perfect thing, it's not high tech, or it's not highly spectacle, but it's high school kids in jeans and t-shirts and a crown or a cape or whatever, and portraying something that a 4th or 5th grader wrote, right? That's really important. So those make a difference to me in life, I think. Yeah.
That's cool. When you were doing a lot of theater, what was like your favorite or a favorite part of the process for you in putting on a show?
It's very much like doing workshops here this week, because I did 4 workshops entitled So You Want to Be a Director. And in seeing, and they directed very short open scenes, contentless scenes. And so I stood purposely, and it was stage reading, so I could see the actors, but I could also see the director. And seeing the joy on the director's faces when something came alive that they had directed and created, that process to me is wonderful. The other part of the process is when I, as a director, give them latitude so that once they embody the character and they begin to know the character sometimes better than I do, even though I've created the vision and all the given circumstances, etc., is that they begin to create bits of action or reaction that I haven't directed. And then I can say, let's make an adjustment or keep that. That's wonderful. And the other part, which I love, is to me, mistakes are gifts. They're unconscious mistakes in character. Maybe a character did an exit to the right rather than the left, and it worked wonderfully well and made better sense than what I had done. That's really thrilling to me, that the actor has taken on this character to the point of saying this is what the character would do. Now, I don't advise that during a performance, but the process, the process to me is quite exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, like doing art, I mean, sometimes there's even parts of the process where, I don't know, I put my kids to bed, maybe I have some more coffee, believe it or not, and just have that kind of time to dig into the story or kind of consider it. Like, if you could paint a picture of like even some of those little details of like when you were putting together shows, what would that look like? How would you explain what that would, maybe like a day in the life, like what that would kind of look like for you?
When the artistic process happens, and the first thing that came to mind was when I learned to direct in college, having those little people, do you remember little people? Little Lego people, moving them around, created a tangible vision and a metaphor for my work. That was thrilling. Reading the script was another thrill, and seeing this, what the playwright created and what the mind of the playwright created and what the theme is. So reading, and I would agree with you, sitting alone and reading that script is wonderful. But then getting it on its proverbial feet and making your little whatever you want to use. Now I use an electronic, CAD and whatever. But those first time that we moved those little people around and saw the levels and what they did, it's thrilling to see what you can create, right? And then working with student designers, to me, is really exciting. Matter of fact, right now in Ohio, I have a summer project going on in which we're doing a kids version of an MTI show, but not only do we have kids in it, ages 7 through 14, but our staff members are high school students. So the musical director is a high school student who happens to be an opera singer, but she loves teaching music. And our choreographer is a high school dancer and musical theater person. So seeing that continuing, seeing this 7-year-old look up to this high school student that said, someday I will be like that, that process is wonderful. And watching those high school students during performance when we're sitting in the back row and they're going, I don't think I taught them to do that. Or taking pride, didn't we do well on that part? So it's creating the legacy and creating who's coming after us, because someday it's going to be for the younger to take over and do what we've created, but make it better, right? So I think the process is from reading it, putting it, doing the vision, putting it on its feet, and then meeting with the student designers. I would have once a week lunch meetings with them, and they would present their pitches or present their ideas, and we'd make adjustments, or having a student that loves history act as the dramaturg on whatever story, whether it's miracle work or whatever story we're doing, where we really need history, and particularly historical aspects according to costume and shoes and whatever else, and hairstyles, is having that input and guiding them and accepting what they've brought, or giving them suggestions and adjustments. It comes all back to teaching, but it's working with, I think, students on all of that. And yes, I love having adult designers as well, but it's much more fun having students,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they still have the joy, and they're not jaded by it. Yeah.
They got the passion and the energy.
Oh, yeah. And they love doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you some rapid fire questions, and then we'll finish up.
Okay.
So, what play really makes you laugh?
Good question. I think anything Ricky Gervais does, but he's not really a theatrical person. What play makes me laugh? Shrek makes me laugh. I just think it's funny. Okay, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, we kind of already talked about what plays touch you deeply.
Yeah.
The future of theater, what do you hope for?
That projections are used more and more. Okay, and you did not pay me. Okay, that projections are used. And it's such a wonderful way for those schools that don't have the capabilities to do box set, with the doors slamming whatever noises off, obviously. But projection, I think that's very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you'd like to add?
To the future of that or anything?
Just at all that you'd love to talk about.
Overall effect, I think, and of course I'm going to push thespians because it's an honor society and students need that recognition in middle school and high school, that they're equal to the National Honor Society and they've excelled in something that they have skills that employers are going to want, that collaboration and communication and all of that.
Well, I'm going to ask you one last question.
All right.
This is right in your wheelhouse. This is what you teach about. A young director comes to you.
Right.
And they would love, from all of your experience through the years, to know what are some small bits of advice that you would have for them?
The very first thing I have them do in any workshop for this is network. Because I may want to work with you. And particularly on the high school level, I say to them, you'll be going to college, network with people in the room, because they're all advanced actors here. And you'll be going to college, and you're going to eye someone across the way, and you'll say, didn't I meet you at such and such conference? Would you be my acting partner? Then later on, when you become student, you become vice president of whatever, you have a Rolodex full of people that you've worked with, even back to high school. And we hear this all the time. But network is the first thing.
Yeah. What if they'd like tips for the stage?
Network. And tips for the stage is, there are three things. Can I hear the actor? Can I understand the actor? And do I believe the actor and the character's creation? And from that point on, everything I do is going to help them. And the final one is, I put your proverbial grandma in the back row, and that grandma doesn't hear well. Make sure grandma can hear and understand and believe everything you're saying. And I, as director, sit in the worst possible place for sight lines. So check out everything you can. Those are really beginning tips. But, it's important that grandma hears it.
Yeah. Love it.
That's a wrap, right?
That's a wrap.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mitch.
so much.
I appreciate it.
That was fun.
It was great.